Hi, my name is Tyler Broadhead. I'm a mental skills coaching professional for ITZ Sports, and today I'm going to talk to you about competitive anxiety. Competitive anxiety is normally thought of as the athlete's physical reaction to competition or an individual's physical reaction to performance. Um, while it is not always necessarily a physical reaction, this is how it is typically thought. And in sports psychology, an athlete's physical reaction to competition is described in terms of their arousal level. And this is typically experienced as increased sweat gland activity, increased skin conductance, increased heart rate, sharp and erratic heart rate changes, and also rapid and irregular breathing. When working with an athlete who seems to be struggling with competitive anxiety, the first and most important thing is understanding what that athlete's optimal performance state is. Now, I showed a picture of a graph showing how some arousal level is good, meaning some elevated heart rate and breathing rate is good because you are performing and you want to be at an elevated state of awareness. But each person has their own ideal performance state. So for some athletes like John McEnroe in tennis, for example, he was known for being very animated, very boisterous, and this is because he knew that his optimal performance state was at a higher arousal level. So the more amped up he was, the better he felt. Whereas to keep the tennis example going, someone like Roger Federer feels as though his optimal performance state is when he is more calm, more relaxed, and you can see that when they're playing on court. So that is a real life example of how competitive anxiety affects people differently, and they need to function as they perform or compete within their optimal performance state, meaning their target heart rate and target breathing rate is something that they're being conscious of while they're performing so they don't get too high or too low. Earlier in the video, I explained what some of the characteristics of competitive anxiety are. And it is important to note that some people's understandings of what anxiety is and how it is experienced with that individual may be different from person to person. And in a personal case that I had working with an athlete, this was one of the issues, was that um, this athlete was not aware that what they were experiencing was actually a form of anxiety, and that this kind of amped up extra energy that they had when they were competing was a result of their physical reaction to competition, not necessarily even their mental reaction. And the first step was actually realizing that, okay, I'm having a physical response to this that is making me feel uncomfortable. It's making me feel like I have not been in the situation before. And as a result of that, this athlete, the sport was tennis, this athlete was over swinging, over hitting some shots, and just did not really have the feel and touch they normally had. So while we were going through this process, the first and most important thing was to recognize that you were having a physical response. And this kind of turned into what we decided were the 3 R's in terms of dealing with competitive anxiety. So with this athlete, we used the 3 R's anytime he felt like he was having a stressful response to competition. And those 3 R's are to recognize, redirect, and reapply. Anytime this athlete felt like he was having a stressful response, we automatically had him just to say to himself, okay, recognize, recognize. And when that happened, he became more aware of his body's response if he might not have been consciously aware that, okay, my heart rate is going up or I'm breathing irregularly. And this is really what causes that competitive anxiety is the lack of awareness at the start that you're having a negative response to competition. And once that happens, you use strategies and techniques practiced. So breathing techniques and working on controlling your heart rate, which is something you have to practice over time, to redirect that stress response so you have a positive response to that situation and to the environment. But what's important is to understand that this does not stay the same. Once you redirect that stress response and you get in your optimal performance state, you don't always stay there. So the third step, reapply, is just to remind the athlete that they need to constantly be using these strategies and be aware as they're competing, because situations and circumstances within the level of competition will change. So you need to be aware for those situations in which, okay, something new happened, I'm having a stress response, I need to reapply these techniques again. And as the athlete was working on this, the situations in which he felt like I did not react the way that I want to became less and less frequent. And over time, this became sort of a mantra, the 3 R's. This is something that I would highly recommend if you feel like you're having a stressful response to competition. Thank you for watching this video on competitive anxiety and how the 3 R's can help to deal with a stressful or anxious response while performing or competing. With ITZ Sports, I'm Tyler Broadhead, reminding you to keep shooting.